Hey everyone, this is MusicTechHelpGuy, and welcome to this video on how to create a distorted, heavy, percussive bass sound in Logic Pro 10. So this is sort of just an off-the-cuff synth idea or synthesis idea, more or less just meant to just get your juices flowing in terms of synth creativity using pretty much all stock plugins and stock instruments in Logic. So let me give you an idea of what this sounds like. The drum beat's just one of the drummer instruments. The instrument I want you to listen to primarily here is this grind machine bass. So obviously it's just a drum kit and a bass right now, but we could layer other elements on top of this, layer vocals on top of it, whatever you want. So my inspiration for this is a couple of things. One, I've been listening to a lot of Dance with the Dead lately. There's sort of like a horror-inspired new synthwave band, new retro synthwave group. I'm not really sure what to call them, but they have a sound that's very distorted, very gritty, but harkens back to the 80s in a really cool way with a bunch of horror themes and things like that. And I'm also drawing inspiration from a video game, believe it or not. The Doom soundtrack, it's the remake of Doom that came out a few years ago. The composer for that, MICK Gordon, man, he's got some really cool stuff. He plays around with distortion as a musical element, and I love that. I love that soundtrack. I haven't even played the game, but I love the soundtrack to it. He did some other soundtracks like Killer Instinct, the reboot of Killer Instinct, and that's all really cool stuff. So he's sort of like a blend between heavy metal rock and sort of industrial, again, grungy, distorted sound. So let me go back to basics real quick, and I'll show you how I created this bass. All right, so I need a starting point for the bass, and my starting point is this ES2 patch. I basically took under synth bass, classic synth bass, I took that patch and I tweaked it quite a bit with some new oscillator settings, some more distortion, and I ended up with this. So nothing too special. It's just kind of this grinding bass patch. By the way, if you want to work along with me, I'm going to leave a copy to this Logic session in the video description below where you can download it for free. One thing I want to do this is I want to make it more percussive. So what I'm going to do is envelope 3 down here. I'm going to pull the sustain all the way down, and then I'm going to pull up the release just a little bit so that we get a little bit of tail end on each percussive note. So now these long notes over here, they're not going to be long notes anymore. They're just going to be short notes with a little bit of tail on them. And I know someone's going to say, Josh, why are you using the ES2? That thing's so damn outdated. You know what? The ES2 fucking rocks. I'm sorry. It's a 20-year-old instrument, and I love it. It's a great instrument. It's really cool to teach synthesis fundamentals on. It's almost like it's so old that it's cool again. It's sort of got like a retro sound to it, and that's why I love it. So I love the ES2. I don't care what anyone says. Okay, so the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to add an arpeggiator to this to make this move. So on my MIDI effects here, I'm going to go to Arpeggiator, and I'm going to set the rate to an 8th note triplet, and that's because the motion of the song is sort of like, it's not a swung feel, but it's a triplet feel. You could even describe it as like a 12/8 or 6/8 sort of feel. So instead of 1 2 1 2 1 2 1 2, you've got 1 2 3 1 2 3 1 2 3 1 2 3. So it's got it's a compound meter. So let's try out the arpeggiator here. So I want the note to jump up an octave, so I'm going to pull the octave range up to 2, and then let's sweep through the different variations and see what we get. So I like variation 4 the most. Now, it's not quite, you might think it's gritty enough, but it's not quite gritty enough for what I'm going for. Now, I don't want to add distortion directly to the ES2 channel strip because I want to be able to blend the distorted sound and my dry signal coming from the ES2. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to create a send, an effect send here, over to a bus. So I'll send this over to bus 11 since that's available. Option click and set that to 100%. And now I have this aux track where I can add a distortion effect. Now, you can use Logic's built-in distortion, the bit crusher. There's all sorts of different distortions you can try out. I'm actually going to use a third-party distortion here that I love from Audio Assault. It's called Grind Machine. It's actually like a bass amp plugin, but I just love the grimy sounds you get out of it. So I'm just going to hit play here, and I'm going to pull down the aux track and just blend in the distortion with the dry signal. Okay, so what's happening here is the distortion channel on the aux track is the notes are a lot longer. The distortion is extending the notes. So what I want is I want those distorted notes to be as short as the original Grind Machine bass track here. So on the aux track, I'm going to add, under modulation here, I'm going to add the tremolo plugin. And what this will do is it'll pulse the volume at whatever rate you want. So I'm going to choose the mono tremolo setting. I'm going to sync this, and I'm going to set the rate to an eighth note triplet. Now you can pull the depth down or up. You can pull it down if you want to soften the effect. I don't want to do that. I do want to pull down the smoothing a bit, though. And you can also adjust the symmetry here if you want the notes to be shorter and more punchy. Cool. So the next thing I want to do is I want to create a sidechain ducking effect with the kick drum and the compressor plugin. The thing is, I don't want the ducking effect to only affect the ES2 instrument. I also want it to affect the aux track that I created. So I'm just going to rename this distortion. And then what I'm going to do is right-click on this and choose Create Track. And what this will do is it'll add that distortion aux track into the main window here. So now what I can do is select the original ES2 bass plus its distortion aux track, go up to Track, create Track Stack, and create a summing stack. So now I have a single track stack here with my Grind Machine bass on it. And if I solo this, you'll hear both the ES2 and the aux track. And I can control the volume of both of them at the same time. So I'm sort of thinking of them now as one single unit rather than two different tracks. So now what I'm going to do is on the Grind Machine bass summing stack, I'm going to add the compressor. And what I want to do is I want to sidechain compress or sidechain duck the bass every single time a kick drum hits. So there's a couple different ways you can do this. The problem with using the drum machine designer here is that the individual channels aren't really you can separate them. They're in like a summing stack here, but it's kind of difficult to just pinpoint what channel each one of these is on. The kick drum here is going to bus 8. So what I could hypothetically do is go to the sidechain up here and choose bus 8, which is the deep kick and deep tech kick 2. And I could use that as my sidechain source. But watch what happens when I use this. At the end there's a spot where the kick drum cuts out. So I could do one of two things. I could either add in a kick drum there to keep that ducking effect going, or I can create a separate sidechain track with a kick drum on it just meant for the sidechain effect. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to create a new instrument track down here. I'll just call it Kick SC for sidechain. I'll just load, it really doesn't matter, any drum kit on it here. I'll use Ultra Beat. Something that's single channel. I don't want another drum machine designer out there with all of its aux tracks. Just choose one of the presets here. I'll use the Dub Smash Kit. Let me just drag this down here. Hold Option to duplicate. I'll just trim this up to 1 bar. And then I'll open this up, delete everything except for the kick drum on C1. So now I just have this repeating 4 on the floor pattern. Then I can just hit Command R a bunch of times to repeat that. And remember, when you create a sidechain ducking effect, the source, the kick drum here, doesn't have to be audible. You can mute it. I just want to hear the effect of the sidechain compression. I don't want to hear the kick itself. So I'm going to mute that Kick SC track, go back to the compressor on the grind machine summing stack, and I'll just choose the Kick SC track now as the sidechain source. And then what you do is just dial in your compression threshold, ratio, attack time, and release time to dial it into taste. Alright guys, so that's how you can create a grinding, distorted, percussive, arpeggiated bass line in Logic. As always, you can check me out on social media, on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. If you want to support the channel, you can check me out on Patreon as well if you want to leave a monthly donation over there. Thank you for the support, and thanks for watching.